So for some reason this morning, I woke up at about 4 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep, so I did the sensible thing that anyone would do, and I logged on to Twitter, obviously. And the first thing I saw was this tweet from The Hill. Trump goes head-to-head with his own military leaders over anti-diversity training. And this is an example of The Hill straight up lying to you about what Trump is doing when he is banning critical race theory from not only federal government agencies, but also federal government contractors. This is not even, guys, they're not even trying to hide it. This is either one of two things has happened here. Either this is a case of the person authoring this tweet and one of the articles that we're going to look at being willfully ignorant about what critical race theory is, or they are straight lying to you. One of those things is true, and neither of them are good for people who espouse to be professional journalists. So moving into the article here, we've got Trump, Pentagon collide over anti-diversity training push. Now, let's just be very clear here at the top of this video. Banning critical race theory does not mean that you are pushing anti-diversity training. Just yesterday on this channel, I did a video breaking down exactly what is meant when Trump banned critical race theory from the federal government and from federal government contractors. It is about banning a fringe ideology which teaches people that white people are racist purely because they have been born white. Folks, there are any number of ways that you can do diversity training without teaching people that they are racist because of how they were born, that they have always been racist, that they will always be racist, and the only thing that they can do throughout their entire lives is to do the work to recover from their inherent whiteness. And I'm not making that up. I was just watching a presentation right before this that was sponsored by the University of Minnesota of a clinical social worker who has put together a 12-step program for white people who are recovering from whiteness based on the Alcoholic Anonymous 12-step program. Based purely on that. For white people to overcome their whiteness. I'm going to do a separate video on that. Don't worry about it for right now. But that is what Trump has banned when he's looking at these types of programs. And the media is flat lying about this. And I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to prove that the media is blatantly lying about what's going on. We're going to look at an article from The Hill. We're going to look at Trump's executive order. We're going to look at an article from Vox. And then, to crown it all off, we're going to look at an absurd editorial from the Washington Post that was issued just a couple of days ago. But before we get into that, folks, I'm trying to grow the channel. I really want to hit 100,000 subscribers by Election Day. YouTube is doing everything in their collective power to try to make that not happen, but I still think I can do it. I am on track to do it, but I need your help. If you enjoy the content I'm putting out, I hope today I will earn your subscription to the channel, turning on those notifications, making sure you're leaving a comment to feed the little Google algorithm, share it out to your friends, all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at this article from The Hill. President Trump's efforts to appeal to his conservative base by banning certain diversity training is butting up against Pentagon official efforts to build a more inclusive military. First off, this is not just an appeal to Trump's conservative base. There are an awful lot of people on my side of the aisle, I am a liberal, that think that critical race theory is insane and has no place anywhere in our society. The conflict has been prominent this week as Trump signed an executive order that extended his administration's ban on training involving race and sex-based discrimination to include military, federal contractors, and grant recipients. The training is not just about race and sex-based discrimination. It is a very fringe ideology looking at the ideas of race and sex-based discrimination in a way that provides no evidence to back up the position that these people are taking, and I'm going to prove it when we look at the executive order. Days later, top Pentagon officials were extolling the virtues of diversity to service members at a virtual town hall and touting the department's efforts to fight racial bias. Well, you know what? That's fine. That is actually not contradictory to banning training based on critical race theory. You can both espouse the virtues of diversity and say that critical race theory is bad. Both of those two things can exist at the same time. Listen, man, I have absolutely no issue with diversity programs. I have never had an issue with diversity programs. I have no issue with making sure that companies have diverse sets of leadership based on a wide variety of factors that lead to diversity, which is not just based on the color of your skin or your gender. It also has to do with thought, approach, things like that. So you got no beef with me when it comes to diversity. You do have a problem when it comes to critical race training, which is not the same thing. And then it goes on to say, and I thought this was like really funny, it's unclear exactly what effects Trump's orders will have on the military's plans to address racism and discrimination in the ranks, but the messaging coming from the White House and the Pentagon stand in contrast to one another. It's not unclear. It's not unclear at all what any of this means, and I am going to prove it to you. But I just want to take look at this one last quote before we look at the White House's executive order. The President of the United States is sending the message that training around racial equity and gender equity is something that he devalues, says Shannon Miller, legal director of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, which is leading a lawsuit against Trump's transgendered military ban, which has nothing to do with him banning critical race theory. Those are two separate issues. P.S. Now, since the Hill seems to be unclear exactly on what this executive order means, I refer you to the flipping executive order. This is the actual text of the executive order, and we're going to just scroll down here. We're just going to scroll down. It's a little ways down. It's in like section 3 of the definitions. Okay, so here's what we're looking at. So we're in, no, that's not what we want. We want section 3 of the executive order, right here. Right here. This is what we're looking at. Requirements for the United States Uniformed Services. The United States Uniformed Services, including the United States Armed Forces, will not teach, instruct, or train any member of the United States Uniformed Services, whether serving on active duty, serving on reserve duty, attending a military service academy, or, oh, this does impact the service academies, good, or attending courses conducted by military department pursuant to a Reserve Officer Training Corps program, to believe any of the divisive concepts set forth in Section 2A of this order. And we're going to look at Section 2A in a second to know exactly what we're talking about. It goes on to say, no member of the United States Uniformed Services shall face any penalty or discrimination on account of his or her refusal to support, believe, endorse, embrace, confess, act upon, or otherwise assent to any of these concepts. All right. So that is what it is banned. And what it sets forth in Section 2A, let's just scroll up here because the executive order is very clear about what it bans. Divisive concepts means concepts that, one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. So you cannot teach that any race or sex is superior in the United States Armed Forces. 2, the United States is fundamentally racist or sexist. We can't teach that anymore. 3, an individual by virtue of his race or sex is inherently racist or sexist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. We can't teach that anymore. Number 4, an individual should be discriminated against or receive adverse treatment solely or partly because of his or her own race or sex. 5, members of one race or sex cannot and should not attempt to treat others without respect to their race or sex, and it goes on and on and on. I will link this executive order in the description below. These are not outrageous concepts. In fact, these concepts are directly in line with the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That is what is being banned. That is these concepts that one race is superior to another cannot be taught in the military. This concept that individuals are fundamentally racist or sexist, or that the United States is a fundamentally racist or sexist country, that can no longer be taught for federal government contractors and the military. It is explicitly clear what this is. And if you were to listen to places like The Hill, you would think that this is an anti-diversity push. This is a push to restore diversity, for crying out loud. But of course, other media outlets don't get it either. This is Vox's recantation of it. I found this on MSN, but it's obviously from Vox. The Trump administration kicked off September by launching an assault on critical race theory and diversity training, and is now capping off a month by doubling down on its promises. And you can see again, they're framing this as diversity training when the executive order clearly states that they are banning training which says that people are inherently racist or sexist. There is no data to support these conclusions. It's also banning training that says America is a fundamentally racist or sexist country, which is the foundational element of what critical race theory is. It goes on. The administration's war against race-based ideologies code for theories and practices that examine racism, history, and institutions. Again, they're lying to you. What this ideology says is that the United States is a racist country. Always has been a racist country, always will be a racist country. So this is not about examining racism. This is about declarations of the fundamental nature of our country. But I don't want to go too far into this. Again, I will link to all of these in the description. I just want to give you a little sampling of the crazy that is coming out of the media when it comes to this ban on critical race theory. This is from the Washington Post. This is from a couple days ago. Trump's race-based patriotism damages patriotism itself. The president turns patriotism from a unifying force to a tool of divisive hostility. I'm sorry, there was a time when we could all agree that you should not treat someone differently because of the color of their skin or because of their gender. There was a time when we all agreed to this. This was not a controversial concept. And now because this is what Trump is doing, every media outlet is saying Trump is being divisive. No, the media are the ones being divisive in their constant lies about what is going on. Over the last 2 weeks, President Trump has ramped up an important theme of his political career, namely the inextricable tie between patriotism and race. He has made persistent and aggressive appeals to an exclusionary ethno-authoritarianism and to a radicalized version of patriotism as an antidote to despair among white working-class voters. No, not what he's done at all. Flat lies. 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 Both signal the president's authoritarian tendencies, and both do damage to patriotism itself, turning it from a unifying force to a tool of divisive race-based hostility. In the end, the president's kind of patriotism makes it into what the political theorist George something rightly calls an enormous moral perversity. From the moment he embraced birtherism as a tool to discredit President Barack Obama and jumpstart his own political career, Trump has claimed to speak for people shunted aside by leaders far more interested in fostering multiculturalism and globalization than in protecting the well-being of white Americans. He has used exaggerated images of the nation under attack from sinister forces to stroke his supporters' fears, and he has offered himself as the nation's sole protector. I'm sorry. Critical race theory is actually most racist towards people of color because it says that if you are black or brown or anything that is not white, that you are not capable of doing very basic things like being on time or writing or holding down a job or any of these other things that they consider to be white supremacist attributes. It is most racist towards people of color. It's like the soft racism of low expectations, man. That is exactly what it is. Say you are not capable of doing these things. Of course they are. As he put it in his 2016 acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention, our convention occurs at a moment of crisis for our nation. The attacks on our police and the terrorism in our cities threaten our very way of life. Any politician who does not grasp this danger is not fit to lead our country. I mean, I agree with Trump. I do, and it's only gotten worse, and it hasn't gotten worse because of Trump. It's gotten worse because the media has been stoking this for freaking years now, and it's insane. Familiar as those themes have been, the president's linkage of whiteness and patriotism intensified in a Constitution Day celebration on September 17th when he announced the formation of the 1776 Commission. The commission, he explained, would foster patriotic education. It will encourage our educators to teach our children about the miracle of United States history and make plans to honor the 250th anniversary of our founding. I'm sorry, that sounds pretty good. When we right now have schools, and by the way, if you have kids, you make sure you know what they're learning in those classes because we have teachers from kindergarten all the way up through college teaching people that America is a fundamentally racist country and it is evil from its inception, and we have to tear the entire thing down to root out systemic racism. That is literally what they're teaching. What Trump is doing is try to counterbalance the damage that has been done by critical race theory in this country. So I'm not going to read any more of this, like, because you can see this stuff like really just pisses me off. What you need to know is this. Too long, skip to the end of the fucking video. Media's lying to you. Don't listen to what they say. Go read the executive orders for yourself, man. It's on the internet. I'll link it just below. Read it yourself, and you decide for yourself what this order is actually talking about, because it is explicitly laid out in painstaking detail what is being banned. And no, it's not diversity training. It's not racial sensitivity training. It is far, far worse than that. It is a fringe ideology that has no place in the country that based on like American fundamental flipping values. All right, guys, that's all I got for this one. Oh, jeez. What can you do, right? Except rant on the internet, I suppose. Yeah, that's all I got for right now. I'll see you guys soon.